Today I'm creating with LottieFiles State Machine, and we have this interactive menu for a Product Sales SaaS dashboard. So how it works is you hover over any menu or two, and then you get a little animation and a description of that tool, the title of the tool, the description that gives you a little bit of context into what the tool is all about and what you can do with it. And it works for all of the menu items here. We have reports, we have the dashboard, there is the delivery page, products menu, for the history menu, and then settings. And this kind of tooltip is very important in user experience design. And one of your major goals as a product owner is to ensure you remove all the roadblocks for your user. And one major roadblock for users, especially if you're an early startup, a SaaS startup, or whatever product you are creating, and you have early adopters, one of the major roadblocks that you are going to face is users not really understanding your product, how it works in the beginning. And this is one of the ways you can essentially eliminate that. You give them things like this that let them easily understand what your product is all about, and put tooltips, contextual menus all over. Just use it strategically to essentially explain your product, so they can look at this at a glance and really understand what the tools are all about without needing to watch lengthy video tutorials or digging through hundreds of pages of documentation. So I find this really very intuitive for many users to adopt, because they can easily just over a tool or a menu, whatever the case may be, and really understand what it's all about. There's the visual cue here, there's the text here, so they go very well in the hand to explain what your product is or what a particular is to your to your customer. And this is really inspired by the Adobe Illustrator tooltip. So if I open Adobe Illustrator now and I hover over any tool, you can see we have the same thing here. We have like it tell you what the tool is all about, and you get a little bit of animation on how you can essentially use the tool. And if you want to learn more, you can click learn more to really learn more about the tool. So I think that's a really important element of any product, whether a website or an app, especially in the case of apps and software as a service, SaaS. So how does it work? Let's get into that. This is it, like I've shown earlier. Just click on pay, and you can just simply hover over any of the menu or two, and you get the animation and the description. So let me just break down the animation for you, how it works, how I was able to make everything work. So like I said, this was inspired by Adobe Illustrator. So the animation essentially started in Adobe Illustrator, where I made all of the illustrations, the design. This is for the dashboard. We have the reports card here. I designed all of the cards. And then I moved everything to Adobe After Effects, where I did all of the animation. After finishing the animation, I just moved into Lottie Creator, where I imported the animation and then broke down the scene so I can have access to individual elements of the animation. Then I added segments for all of the tools, the pop-out menu and everything. After adding the segments, I then went into state machines, where I've essentially just connected all of the segments and then added some interaction so people can either I created two state machines for this particular animation. One works with just over the tool, and then you get the contextual tooltip. I also created another state machine for mobile devices, because this particular one works on hovering interaction, and hovering is not a thing on mobile devices. So this is one of the things you have to pay attention to when you are designing interactivity, because if you are restricting any type of interactivity to interaction like hovering alone, mobile users will not be able to get to that state, whatever it is. So if it is an important part or element of your app or website, they will completely miss out on that. So what you can do is you can create multiple state machines in a single animation, which I've done here. For the mobile state machine, instead of hovering, you can hold down and then get the same contextual tooltip. So for mobile users, that would be equivalent to clicking and holding, like touching and holding that particular tool to get the contextual tooltip. So that's very important. You have to pay attention to these things when you are designing interactivity around your app or website or whatever it is. So let me just duplicate one of these state machines to show you how the interactivity works for this particular animation. I'll do that with the desktop version. So let me delete most of this so I can start from the beginning, explain how it works. So in the beginning of the animation, in the beginning of the interactivity here, I essentially have a global state, a single state, which is like this first frame of the animation where no tool is selected. So what happens is from this global state, once you click or you over any of this particular menu here, you get the tooltip. If you stop hovering, it moves over back to this particular the global state. So that's how the interaction essentially works. You hover or click and hold down, you get the tooltip for that particular menu or tool. When you stop that particular interaction, it reverses back to this particular state. So for each of the menu here, each of the tools, I have two segments for them. One is the introduction segment that does the introduction animation. For example, for this is going to be this particular one where the animation appears, the menu itself is highlighted, the color changes and everything. Then we have a second animation for that, which is a loop. So once it does that little intro animation, it moves into that loop, which will continue until you stop that particular interaction, whether it is hovering or clicking and holding it down. So that is broken down for each of the tools. That's how I've broken that down: an intro and a loop, an intro and a loop. But how do I move the animation from that particular intro to the loop? So I created an event, an input called event. If you don't know what inputs are in state machines, if you don't know what interactions are, if you don't know what segments are, I made a video recently explaining all of these essential concepts. So please check that out. So I made a particular, this is it here, this event called dashboard triggered. So it's just an event. And what happens is once the animation gets to this state, the intro state, it triggers this incomplete action. Once it's complete, it triggers this particular event. And then I use that event to make a transition. So how do you connect two segments? Let me delete this. You just hold the red part, connect it to the green part. And then I added that particular events that this triggers at its end. I added it to this particular transition as a condition, a gate. So this is it here. So once this is completed, it triggers that event, which enables the flow of the animation to move to the loop, and the loop will continue. If I click on this, I've set the loop to infinity, so it will just continue looping until you stop hovering or you stop holding down this particular button, and then the animation moves to the global state again. So I have to first, to make sure the animation moves in the first place from the global state to the dashboard intro, I have to connect the two with a transition. I created a boolean for that, which is dashboard over. This is the boolean here, and its default state is false. Again, if you don't know what boolean is, you don't know what input interaction is, I made a video recently explaining all of these concepts, so you can check that out. So I've created the boolean. I'm going to use the boolean to move from the global state, the idle state, to this intro or to any of the tools at all. So I just click on that particular transition, and then I add a condition that says if dashboard over is equals to true, move from the idle state to the dashboard intro. So that's saying if anybody is hovering over this particular to this particular menu here, move to that state where that animation plays, and then it moves to this particular loop. But what if they stop? What happens? That's when I now connect this loop back to the idle state, and then I use a transition that says if the dashboard over is equals to false, move back to the idle state. So let's just test that out. And then it moves back to the global state. And then it moves back to the global state. So this particular interaction is, the hovering is happening because I've created some interactions here already. For example, this is the one for the dashboard menu. So pointer enter, if I click on this, whenever the pointer, pointer enter is whenever you move your pointer over this element, that's the dashboard menu. It sets the input value to true. Input this input dashboard over, it sets it to true, and when the opposite is true, so whenever you exit this particular hovering, it sets it to false. And that's why I can actually hover over the element and get this transition. But there's something that I want more. Like if I move the cursor over this and the animation is in this particular state, if I remove the cursor from that particular element, it feels sluggish in moving back to the global state. Let me show you what I mean. So this is it. If I move it here, it still remains on the screen for a couple of milliseconds or seconds, as the case may be. It feels sluggish. And that is because I don't have a transition connecting the animation from this state, the intro state, back to the global state. So I can do that by just holding this down and then connecting back to the global state, and then adding that particular condition that I added for this loop animation too. So that will be hovering is equals to false. Once somebody stops hovering on this, move back to the global state immediately, and then the transition is more snappy in that way. It doesn't feel sluggish anymore. Whenever I stop hovering, it immediately moves back to the global state. And even if it gets to the loop, it will just continue looping as long as you are still hovering over that particular menu or that particular tool. It continues this loop, and once you stop, it moves back to the global state. So that's just how that works. Then I did the same thing, exactly the same thing for all the other tools. But since I don't have the interactions here, it's not going to work. So I did the same thing, connected them, their intro to their loop, which you can see right here. This is it right here. So connected them to their loops, and then I can hover over any of these particular menu items and get the tooltip. For mobile devices, the interaction is different. So you have to actually hold down your left click button on mobile device is going to be touching the screen or touching the elements and holding it down. And once I stop holding it down, it moves back to the global state. So I'm going to make the source file of this particular animation. This animation is already on the LottieFiles community. So I'll leave a link to that in the description, in the comments or the description of this particular video. So if you want to check the animation out, you want to learn from it, you want to use it, please do as you wish. If you have any question about LottieFiles State Machine, or you have any project that you want to discuss, please let me know. You can shoot me a DM or write me a personal message, whatever it is. I have my email address on my profile too. So that's that for this particular video. Like I said, if you want to learn more about state machines, LottieFiles, they have quite a lot of interesting tutorials on state machines on their platforms on YouTube and so on and so forth. I also made a video explaining the key concepts of making a state machine work. You can check that on my profiles on my YouTube page too. So that's that. Thanks for watching this video. Bye.